So, Pauline Hanson's One Nation party is sounding a pretty big alarm. They're talking about a potential fuel crisis that they claim could bring Australia to a grinding halt. But what's really going on here? In this explainer, we're going to break down their argument, what they see as the problem, who they're blaming, and the really drastic solution they're pushing for. Okay, so it all kicks off with this pretty stark warning, which is reportedly coming straight from Australian dairy farmers. The message? It's simple, and it's powerful. No fuel, no milk. And this right here gets to the very heart of what they're saying, that a fuel problem isn't just about your car, it's about the food on our tables. So how did we even get to this point? What's actually happening that has food producers so worried they'd say something like that? Let's dig into the problem as they see it, starting with the industries they say are on the brink. According to One Nation, this isn't some kind of what-if scenario down the road. They're saying it's a crisis that's happening right now. They're basically arguing that the entire food supply chain is under threat, from the farm right to the supermarket shelf. And look, we're not just talking about one industry here. The argument is that a fuel shortage would hit a whole bunch of crucial sectors all at once. We're talking about dairies literally unable to get milk out, poultry farms with no way to ship their eggs and chicken, and trucks loaded with fresh veggies that are just stuck. But how is this squeeze supposed to be working? Well, One Nation points directly at the supply chain itself. They claim that the big companies controlling those huge fuel storage tanks are essentially pricing out the smaller independent distributors. And that's a huge deal, because those are the very distributors that regional Australia completely depends on. Okay, so if the system is breaking down, who's to blame? Well, in One Nation's argument, they're not shy about it. They point the finger in two very specific directions, and they claim they're both responsible for creating this mess. So they've got this two-pronged attack. On one side, you have the big fuel companies, who they accuse of just straight-up price gouging and making record profits. And then on the other side, they're calling out the government for being, well, asleep at the wheel. They're accusing them of doing nothing, not being honest about how much fuel we actually have, and just failing for years to secure the country's fuel supply. And you see, they argue this is not a new problem. They trace it back decades, pointing to this long, slow decline in Australia's ability to refine its own fuel. We've gone from having 10, maybe 12 refineries, all the way down to just 2. And they're quick to point out this happened under governments from both sides of the aisle. So with fewer refineries, you get this huge vulnerability. They point to international agreements that say we should have a 90-day fuel supply, a standard they claim Australia just isn't meeting. And then they ask you to compare that to a country like Japan, which they say keeps a whopping 200-day supply ready to go. Well, given this pretty dire picture they're painting, what's the solution? One Nation is calling for something pretty drastic. They want the government to use a powerful and kind of controversial tool that it already has. Okay, so their whole solution really hinges on this one thing: the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act. Now, this isn't some new law they're proposing. It's been on the books since 1984. It was designed for the exact kind of national emergency they believe is happening right now, and it gives the government some pretty massive powers to take control. So what would this actually look like? Well, it would basically mean a full-on government takeover of the fuel market. The minister could control everything, all the fuel stocks, what our last 2 refineries produce, every single sale across the country. And here's the real kicker. They claim it would let the government set a daily fuel price, which would put an immediate stop to the price gouging they've been talking about. Okay, but triggering an emergency act like this, it comes with a massive consequence: rationing. And One Nation is very clear that this rationing wouldn't be fair. They say it would hit different parts of Australia in very, very different ways. They basically lay out this tale of 2 Australias. In the cities, maybe you can hope on a train or work from home. But out in regional Australia, where our farms are, where our transport industry is based, those just aren't options. For them, no fuel means no work. End of story. And this all leads them to pose this one question, which they use to show just how out of touch some of the typical solutions might be. Yeah, work from home sounds great, but it's a total fantasy for the people who actually keep the country fed and moving. The truck drivers, the farm hands, the cops, the abattoir workers. So you see, if you're rationing fuel, you have to make a choice. And in their view, it's actually a pretty easy one. The number one priority has to be the food supply chain. The fuel needs to go to the farms and to the trucks delivering our food. That, they argue, has to come before someone's commute in the city. And this is where they leave us, with their final, really urgent question. From their perspective, the crisis isn't coming, it's already here. So they ask, what sort of cataclysm are we waiting for? And it's a question that really puts all the stakes of their argument right there on the table.